let's move on here and talk about the end of 2019, which marks the end of the decade. So we've been asking our panelists to pick the top ETFs for the last 10 years. Again, it's not the biggest winners necessarily, what's gained the most. It's the ones that have generated the most buzz or changed the ETF landscape in some major way. And they didn't have to be around the whole time, by the way. So we have our recent guest picks here, European equities, and Vanguard's bet on the broad market. That's VTI, total stock market, stood out to them. I know you guys have some thoughts on this. Jay, your vote.
My vote for the last decade is XLK, technology sector. Technology was the difference between an outperforming portfolio and an underperforming portfolio. So you saw a lot of asset managers allocating towards high growth technology stocks. We saw how important the FANGs were in contributing to the growth of the S&P 500. It made all the world the difference.
Hard to argue with technology. John, again, an unusual choice.
Yeah, well, that's what we do, right? We pick unusual ETFs. Look, if you told me 10 years ago that the iShares minimum volatility ETF, the ticker USMV, that would have garnered $35 billion in assets, I would have bet money against that. But what it does is it picks a basket of about 200 stocks. It optimizes against low correlation, low volatility stocks against the broader market. Over the last 10 years, it's had better risk-adjusted returns versus the S&P. Yeah. So it has like some built-in protection.
And it doesn't bother you, you're not getting any real growth here. You're owning Pepsi and Coke and utilities. That's the problem I have with it. I know it worked in the middle of the year because people were concerned that the global growth was going to slow down dramatically. But really, I mean... So
compound annual growth for the S&P over the last 10 years is 14.6%. Compound annual growth for USMV is 14.40. So I mean, it's very, very close to S&P. You just don't have as much downside risk as the S&P.
And of course, Brendan, you were talking about S&P 500 ETFs.
Yeah, I mean,
your vote for the decade.
For the past decade, I mean, there's been one game in town, which has been U.S. large cap. The more you've diversified, the worse you've done. So certainly for the past decade, anything but the S&P 500 has led to lagging, outside of breaking outside tech. Yeah. Because we've been in this growth market.
I'd have to agree with you. My vote for the ETF of the decade that had the most impact would be the S&P 500, SPY, IVV, VOO, those types. If you were 10 years ago, the public still wasn't terribly widely versed in investing in ETFs in general, and even in the concept of buying a single stock that represented essentially most of the U.S. stock market. And I think the public now is very used to that. And in terms of impact, it's hard to argue about the S&P 500 funds in general.
Those three ETFs are three of the four largest globally. Yeah. So I just think just by pure definition of investor interest.
I'll vote with you on that one.